The morning sun cast long shadows across Fort Braxton's outdoor shooting range as 7-year-old Harold Winters approached the check-in station. His weathered hands gripped a worn rifle case, and his slow, measured steps drew immediate attention from the cluster of young Marines already gathered near the firing line. "Look at this guy," Corporal Jake Mitchell whispered to his companion, barely containing his laughter. "Think Grandpa knows this isn't the bingo hall?" His voice carried just enough to reach Harold's ears, followed by snickers from 3 other Marines who had stopped their equipment checks to watch the elderly man's approach. The range safety officer, Sergeant Davis, looked up from his clipboard with barely concealed concern. "Sir, are you sure you're in the right place? This is an active military range with some pretty demanding courses. Maybe the civilian range down the road would be more suitable for recreational shooting?" Before we dive into this story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you've witnessed similar situations where someone's age was underestimated in your community. Harold set his rifle case down gently on the concrete bench and turned to face Sergeant Davis with calm dignity. "I'm exactly where I need to be, son. Been shooting since before you were born." His voice carried the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing to prove, yet everything to demonstrate. The sergeant's eyebrows raised as he glanced at his insurance paperwork. "Sir, I have to inform you that our liability coverage requires participants to acknowledge the 78% failure rate on our advanced courses. Even experienced marksmen struggle with these distances and conditions." He tapped his pen against the clipboard, clearly hoping Harold would reconsider. Behind them, more Marines had gathered to watch the unfolding situation. $20 says he can't even load the rifle without help," Corporal Mitchell announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. His buddy, Private Torres, shook his head with amusement. "Make it 40. Look at those hands shake. Probably hasn't held a weapon since Vietnam." The betting grew more animated as Harold began unpacking his rifle with deliberate, methodical movements. Harold's weathered fingers moved with surprising precision as he assembled his rifle, each component clicking into place with practiced efficiency. The Marines watched with growing skepticism, their initial amusement giving way to pointed observations about his every movement. "Check out those reading glasses," Private Torres muttered to the gathering crowd. "But he can't even see the targets clearly." Corporal Mitchell nodded in agreement, crossing his arms as he studied Harold's deliberate preparation. "Guy's probably confusing this place with a hunting lodge. Wait till he tries to handle the recoil." Sergeant Davis approached Harold's position again, his concern evident in his furrowed brow. "Sir, I should mention that today's course includes targets at 800 meters under windy conditions. The equipment requirements alone are pretty demanding for someone who might not be familiar with modern military-grade optics and ballistics calculations." Harold looked up from his rifle scope adjustment, his gray eyes steady and unblinking. "Son, I've been calculating windage and elevation since you were in diapers." The quiet authority in his voice caused a momentary pause in the Marines' commentary, though their skeptical expressions remained unchanged. The range master, Master Sergeant Rodriguez, emerged from the control tower and strode toward Harold's position with purposeful steps. His weathered face bore the expression of someone who had seen every type of shooter attempt these courses, and very few succeeded. "Sir, I need to be direct with you," Rodriguez said, his voice carrying the authority of 30 years in the Marines. "This isn't a recreational shooting experience. We're running precision marksmanship trials today with some of the most challenging conditions you'll find anywhere. The wind's gusting at 15 miles per hour, and we're talking about targets that would challenge our best snipers." Harold continued his methodical equipment check, seemingly unbothered by the master sergeant's warnings. The gathered Marines exchanged knowing glances, their betting pool now approaching triple digits as more spectators joined the crowd. "Look at him ignore the warnings," Corporal Mitchell whispered to his growing audience. "Stubborn old coot's going to embarrass himself in front of everyone. Rodriguez knows his business, and if he's concerned, this guy's about to learn a very public lesson about overestimating himself." Master Sergeant Rodriguez pulled out his range safety checklist and positioned himself directly in Harold's line of sight. Sir, before we proceed, I'm required to inform you that today's course has a documented failure rate of 84% among active-duty Marines with current combat experience. We're talking about precision shots that require compensating for crosswinds, elevation changes, and moving targets at extreme distances. Harold finally looked up from his scope adjustments, his calm gray eyes meeting Rodriguez's concerned gaze. Master Sergeant, I appreciate your diligence, but I didn't drive 3 hours to turn around at the gate. His voice carried no irritation, just quiet determination that somehow made the surrounding Marines more skeptical rather than less. The betting pool had attracted nearly 20 spectators now, with Corporal Mitchell acting as unofficial bookmaker. $100 says he doesn't hit a single target, Mitchell announced loudly. Any takers? Private Chin stepped forward with a grin. Make it $150. Guy's about to provide the entertainment of the week when he realizes those targets aren't painted on barn doors. Harold settled into a shooting position with movements that seemed slow but revealed themselves as deliberately controlled. The first target stood 600 meters downrange, a standard silhouette that appeared impossibly small through the shimmering heat waves rising from the desert floor. The crack of his first shot echoed across the range, followed by an immediate silence as everyone waited for the spotter's call. Hit! Center mass, the voice crackled through the radio with barely concealed surprise. The gathered Marines exchanged glances, their confident smirks wavering slightly. Beginner's luck, Corporal Mitchell declared quickly, though his voice lacked its earlier certainty. Wait till the wind picks up and the targets start moving. That's when experience separates from accident. Private Torres nodded in agreement, but his eyes remained fixed on Harold's position with newfound attention. Harold worked his bolt with smooth efficiency and adjusted his scope for the second target. Master Sergeant Rodriguez stepped closer to the spotting scope, his professional curiosity now fully engaged despite his earlier concerns about the elderly shooter's capabilities and the potential liability issues. The second shot rang out, followed immediately by another hit call from the spotter. Then a third. Each bullet found its mark with mechanical precision that defied the dismissive predictions echoing around the firing line just minutes earlier. Private Chun shifted uncomfortably as Harold's fourth consecutive shot struck center mass. That's not luck anymore, he whispered to Torres, who was now watching Harold's shooting stance with growing fascination instead of amusement. The old man's breathing pattern, his trigger control, even the way he managed recoil, suggested training far beyond recreational weekend shooting. Master Sergeant Rodriguez moved to the spotting scope and peered downrange at the targets. His weathered face revealed nothing, but his increased attention spoke volumes to the Marines who knew him well. When Rodriguez paid this kind of attention to a shooter, it meant something significant was happening. Corporal Mitchell's betting pool had grown quiet. The easy money and confident predictions replaced by uncertain glances and nervous adjustments of equipment. Who is this guy? Someone muttered from the back of the crowd, voicing the question that was beginning to dawn on everyone present. Harold transitioned to the advanced course without pause, his rifle tracking smoothly to targets positioned at 750 meters. The wind had picked up significantly, creating cross-currents that would challenge even experienced military snipers, yet his shots continued finding their marks with disturbing consistency. Master Sergeant Rodriguez stepped away from his spotting scope and approached Harold's position with a measured stride of someone reassessing everything he thought he knew. Sir, I need to ask about your background. This level of precision isn't something you pick up at civilian ranges. His voice carried professional respect that hadn't been there 20 minutes earlier. The betting pool had completely dissolved, replaced by hushed conversations and nervous energy among the Marines. Corporal Mitchell found himself studying Harold's equipment with new eyes, noting details he'd initially dismissed as outdated gear. That scope's military issue, he whispered to Torres. Look at those modifications on his rifle stock. Private Chin moved closer to get a better view of Harold's shooting technique. The old man's movements displayed a fluidity and precision that spoke of thousands of hours of training under conditions far more demanding than this desert range. Harold's rifle cracked again, and the spotter's voice came through with increasing awe. Hit, dead center, at 800 meters. The wind was gusting to 20 miles per hour now, conditions that would cause most shooters to pack up and wait for calmer weather. Yet Harold continued his methodical destruction of every target presented to him. Master Sergeant Rodriguez pulled out his range logbook and began flipping through pages with urgency. "Sir, I need to see some identification. What you're doing out there isn't humanly possible without serious training." His tone had shifted from concern to professional curiosity, mixed with growing suspicion about Harold's true background. The Marines had stopped all pretense of casual observation. Every eye was fixed on Harold's position as he adjusted his scope for an even more distant target. The casual mockery and dismissive comments had been replaced by complete silence, broken only by the sound of wind across the desert and the occasional whispered question about Harold's identity. Corporal Mitchell approached Private Torres with a troubled expression. "Look at his breathing pattern, his trigger discipline. That's not civilian training. That's military precision at a level I've never seen before on this range." Master Sergeant Rodriguez returned to Harold's position carrying a clipboard thick with range records and qualification standards. "Sir, we have one final target that we reserve for our most advanced shooters. It's positioned at 1,000 meters in crosswinds that are now hitting 25 miles per hour. In 30 years of running this range, I've seen exactly 7 successful hits on that target." Harold looked up from his rifle scope with those steady gray eyes that had remained calm throughout the entire session. "7 hits out of how many attempts, Master Sergeant?" His question carried quiet confidence that made Rodriguez hesitate before answering. "Over 3,000 attempts by qualified military snipers," Rodriguez replied, his voice carrying newfound respect mixed with disbelief at what he was witnessing. "Sir, there's no shame in calling it a successful day right here. You've already exceeded every expectation anyone had for this session." The gathered Marines pressed closer, forming a semicircle behind Harold's shooting position. The easy mockery and confident predictions had been completely replaced by tense anticipation as they prepared to witness either an impossible shot or the moment this mysterious old man finally met his limits. Harold settled into his final shooting position with the same methodical precision he displayed throughout the session. The distant target wavered in the heat shimmer, barely visible even through high-powered optics, while crosswinds created conditions that would challenge the most elite military snipers in the world. The entire range had fallen into absolute silence. 23 Marines, 3 range officers, and Master Sergeant Rodriguez watched with held breath as Harold made minute adjustments to his scope and calculated windage for conditions that changed every few seconds. His finger found the trigger with deliberate pressure. The rifle cracked once, the sound echoing across the desert before disappearing into wind and distance. 4-5 eternal seconds. Everyone waited while the spotter checked the target through his scope. "Hit!" The spotter's voice came through the radio with stunned disbelief. "Dead center mass at 1,000 meters. Perfect shot." The silence stretched for another 3 seconds before Master Sergeant Rodriguez stepped forward. His expression transformed from skepticism to something approaching awe. "Sir, I need to know exactly who you are, because what you just accomplished is beyond exceptional." Harold reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a worn military identification card, handing it quietly to Master Sergeant Rodriguez. The Master Sergeant's eyes widened as he read the name and credentials, his face cycling through disbelief, recognition, and finally profound respect. "Gunnery Sergeant Harold Winters, retired," Rodriguez announced to the gathered Marines, his voice carrying reverence. "Marine Corps shooting team instructor for 15 years. 3-time national champion. Holder of the longest confirmed kill shot in Marine Corps history at 2,100 meters. The Marines stood in stunned silence as the implications sank in. Corporal Mitchell stepped forward first, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine humility. "Sir, I owe you an apology. We all do. We had no idea who you were." Harold smiled gently as he packed his rifle with the same methodical care he'd shown all day. "Son, that's exactly why I come to ranges like this. People see an old man and forget that some of us earned our gray hair in places where precision meant survival." If this story moved you, share your thoughts about your favorite moment or character, or tell us about someone you know who showed hidden strength when others underestimated them.